Our message title for today is as follows on the screen. It's Building a Spiritually Mature Relationship with God, Part 2. So today is Sabbath. We're talking about Sabbath. So I grew up in Phoenix, so I had never experienced a snow day in my entire life, okay? Which I think is so sad because I never got the joy of a snow day as a child, but now I get the joy of a snow day with my child. So like when I want my child at school, he's at home with me, and he's happy, but I'm like, my whole day has changed so I feel like that's not fair because I just get the parent side of snow day. I don't get the child side. It's like not fun. But most of you guys grew up in snowy places, okay, wherever you lived. Wasn't that like the best? Like you're like, especially when it's like I have a test the next day and that's the snow day. It's like the best. You know what I mean? You get a jackpot. What do you guys do on your snow day? Go play outside in the snow? Or like just chill? I don't know what you guys do. I just really want a snow day as an adult. I think it'd be really fun. Like you know what I'm talking about? Like you just you had all your plans for the day and everything is canceled. So I think last winter on a Sunday, I don't think so. I think Ayang and Nayang and my husband and I, it was snowing so bad on the drive here that we had to cancel church for you guys. And everyone stay home. It's too dangerous. And I forgot to put this picture up, but we couldn't get into the doorway because that snowed so much. And so it was up to here. And I just remember thinking man, why is it on a Sunday? Man, why can't it be on a Monday? I want a day off too. But snow days are just they just seem so fun to me. Just the idea of a perfect day all to yourself. You can't go anywhere. You can't do errands. You just can do whatever you want. That sounds like the best. That is the idea and the heart behind Sabbath today. Just a tiny glimpse. And last week, I talked about daily office, the idea of pausing for moments throughout your day to think and seek God. Think about God, seek God, to know Him. Literally, I have a reminder on my phone for multiple times throughout the day. I don't always do it, which is not great, but at least it's there. I have a reminder on my phone for 7 a.m., 10 p.m., when I wake up, before I go to bed. If it's just 5 minutes, that's fine. But the point of it is to do you guys do this when you wake up? Who wakes up and you already are thinking about your whole day, what's going on next, right? Most of us do, okay? It is very hard to get your brain to stop. It's just the minute you wake up. And so being very intentional about okay, the minute I wake up, I'm going to spend these 5 minutes thinking about God and being God, thank you that I'm alive. Thank you that I'm breathing. Thank you for heater. I don't know, whatever it is. Thank you, God, just thinking about Him and making that an important part of your day. Because you will get to your day. It'll happen. But just those small things that we can do to center our lives around God. You guys, you might be asking, how do I have a deeper relationship with God? Oh, it's so hard. Guys, it's actually really easy. It's so easy, it's offensive how easy it is. It's things like this. It's spending 5 minutes in the morning being intentional about seeking God during those 5 minutes. That's what it takes to grow a relationship with God. That's what it takes. That's all it takes. That's what it is. 5 minutes in the morning or at night before you go to bed. Those intentional, whatever you decide to do, everyone's different, but whatever you decide to do, to be intentional, to stick and to fight against your busyness, your lives. How many of you guys know, okay, when you're in high school, you're oh, when I go to college, it's going to be so much better. You know? You go to college. Some of you are You go to college, is it better? No. And you're oh, I just can't wait to graduate. It's going to be so much better when I'm not in school. Is that true? No. Right? Those of us that are older, man, school was the easiest time of your life, high school was easy. College, most of you are in college. Let me tell you, life after college only gets busier and harder, okay? It's never going to get easier. It's never going to be you have more time and less responsibility. It's never going to be that way. And so in this season now, how do you practically make it a part of your lifestyle? So daily office is about that. It's about just like one, even if it's like once a week, whatever works for you, but really practicing it, like really trying it. Of like 5 minutes in the morning, I'm literally stopping everything and like just thinking about God. You have a verse that you love, then write it out on your mirror, or a song that you love, turn that on. Like, well, so daily office is about silence, but still, like whatever it is, like find that way to see God, even if it's just like a minute or two. If you don't do that, you can't build a relationship with God. Do you guys know how relationships last? Do you guys know how? When my husband and I first got married, it's really easy because you love each other. Honeymoon stage is great. You know what I realized it is, though? It's the small things. It's the small things. Like, Wilson comes out to church at like 6 a.m. Tuesday through Saturday, so he's awake before I am, let's just say, okay? And so every morning, like before he leaves, I'm still like, probably like on the bed, don't look that great. But I know he always kisses me before he goes. Like, you know when you're kind of like, okay, bye. You know, like you kind of sense it every day. It's those small things, those small, tiny things, you know? Or like when we have one morning off, usually it's Monday morning for us, like, so like we'll just like spend a few moments like before our son runs into our room and drives us crazy, like we're just like hugging, like just small things. It's those small, tiny things, but you do it every day. That's how a relationship continues to like have life, even in the busyness. And that's exactly how it is with God. If you and I don't check in with him, even if it's small things, then you've gone for weeks and months and years without talking, right? Like, it's hard to pick back up after that. So it's building that kind of relationship with God. That's what I'm talking about. So daily office helps us in our fast-paced, super hurried world. Like, I think the worst thing in the world would be to wake up at like 50 and be like, wow, what did I do with my life? Like, I don't even know who God is. Like, I have done nothing that is worthy of eternity. I've just been hustling for what? You know, like being intentional every day to reprioritize your life before God. That's what's going to help you stay on track. So that's daily office. But the other piece, remember I said there's two things that help us, you know, on the treadmill, there's that red safety button, you know, that like you're supposed to clip onto you. So like if you like it'll stop the machine, right? We need a hard stop sometimes, like an ability for us to stop in our lives. And so that idea is the Sabbath, okay? So Sabbath is like very foreign to us. Most of us grew up with immigrant parents who have hustled their entire lives. Like Sabbath is a very foreign concept. So we're going to go into that today. So Sabbath is like Halloween, okay? Fun-size candy bar is like daily office. Like little bit of rest throughout the day. Okay, a little like 5 minutes here. Sabbath is the jumbo-size candy bar. Okay? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a whole day where you're like, I'm going to rest in God. We're going to go into it, okay? But, so, fun size, jumbo size. Okay? Sometimes you just need a bite size. But sometimes you just want the big old candy bar, right? Like, that's what Sabbath is. So, Sabbath, in the Hebrew word, we'll see a definition of, throw it up here. It's Sabbath is to cease and to stop and to rest, okay? So, nothing for 24 hours, not absolutely nothing, I'll go into the details, but really resting in God for a set amount of time. And the first person who practiced Sabbath in the Bible was who? Who's the first person who ever practiced Sabbath? Who's the first person who rested in Scripture? Yes! Thank you, Nick. The first person who rested was God himself. Genesis 2, verse 2 and 3. Let's look at that verse on the screen. It says this: on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, and so he, what? Rested from all his work. And God blessed that day and declared it holy. Holy meaning set apart, different, separate, because it was the day when he rested from all his work in creation. Okay, do you think that God actually needs to rest because he doesn't have energy? No. And yet God is the first one who rests and shows us this pattern of work and rest, work and rest. He's the first one that shows us that. And guess whose image we are made in? We are made in God's image as his people. And so this idea of resting and working, both are good and both are necessary. Is he like, oh, all 7 days? Sabbath, man. Don't do anything all the time. Is that what it is? No, it's working and resting. The importance for, as human beings, the way you are built and wired, the necessity to both work and rest. Now, that's really hard in our American lives. Do you guys know who, like, over in Spain, they freaking get, like, siestas, man. You know, like, or whatever it's called, siestas. Like, we as Americans don't know how to stop, and then we as Korean Americans, most of us, have it worse because we just don't know how to stop because our parents couldn't stop ever, right? Like, we don't know how to stop. But here's the thing. Let's throw the next screen up. I want you to read this, and I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them this. Ready, set, go. I am a human being, not a human doing. Turn to your neighbor, look at somebody in the face, and tell them that. Ready, go. I am a human being, not a human doing. You are a human being, not a human doing. Nobody's called a human doing. Nobody's called a human doing. You and I are all human beings, right? And yet, our culture tells us you are what you do. When you go to college, what do they ask you? What major are you in? When you leave college, you start working, what do they ask you? Your name and what you do for a living. That's just part of the culture. We can't stop that. And yet, it's important for us to be aware of it. As Christians, as human beings, God has built all of us in a way that we are more than just what we do. And yet our culture has us on that hamster wheel. You are what you do, you are what you make, you are what your status is, and so just chase after that. And then what? And then what? What is the point of all of that? And so we do all this hustling only to realize that we're not connected to anybody, ourselves. We're not connected to our family. We're not connected to God. We've just been hustling. So we're going to go deeper into Sabbath and that idea. And I want to clarify something. What Sabbath is not, okay? So Sabbath is not a day off. Okay, it's not PTO. It's not a day off. It's not just like, oh, I just get to do whatever. That's not what Sabbath is. Sabbath is about resting in God. So the heart of Sabbath is this: trusting in God to take care of us when we stop. I'm going to repeat that. The heart of Sabbath, what Sabbath is supposed to teach us is how to trust in God that when we stop, he will take care of us. Because we think if I stop, the whole world stops, man. Okay? Especially as like moms or like women, we get this. We're like, if I stop, the whole family stops. Which is true. But, like, the point is, like, you know, like, I just think, like, if I stop, if I'm sick, like, the whole world's going to fall apart. So I can't stop. But that's also a lie. It's not true. Because then who's God? Me. Can I trust that God will take care of me? The best place we see this picture is in the book of Exodus, when the Israelites have been slaves for over 400 years. As a slave, do you just get a day off for fun? No. For over 400 years, God's people have been slaves. Y'all know Egypt and all their pyramids, okay, all their like huge things. Y'all know that was made on the backs of people, of slaves, is what it was built on. Like this, they have not had a day off in their entire lives. And so God finally frees them, and they're in the wilderness. And the funny thing is, Israel is out of Egypt, but Egypt and that lifestyle is still in them. You know what I mean? Like, they're out of Egypt physically, but that lifestyle, that hustle as slaves, the survival, like, mentality is still in them. And God is going to teach them, you're my people now. You don't have to live that way. You don't have to live like you're just trying to survive. What you need to do is trust me that I will take care of you. And that's what God is teaching them in Exodus. And so God commands them and invites them to rest. What a radical God we serve. He's like, I'm going to save you, and I'm going to teach you how to rest. So there's 10 commandments, right? Have you ever looked at Exodus? If you look at Exodus 20, if you look at the physical, like on paper, you look at the chapter, you will see that out of all the commandments, the fourth one is the longest. It's like actually the longest, like most amount of sentences. What is the fourth commandment about? Look at verse 8. Exodus 20, verse 8. Or no, yes, okay? It says this, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. This is the fourth commandment, rest. It's the longest one. Look at verse 10. He doesn't just tell them, keep it holy. He explains it further. In verse 10, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household works. And I didn't add this part in this verse, but he explains nobody. No man, no woman, no child, no slave, nobody. Even the slaves who are not Israelites, they can't even work either. I want everyone to rest. That's how crazy. Verse 11 says this. Why? Why are they called to rest? In verse 11 it says, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. And that is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Remember the Israelites in the wilderness, there's nothing, okay? And what rained down for them every morning? Manna, every morning, bread from heaven, literally. They would scoop it up, and that was their food for the day. You know what's interesting? Every day, the same amount of manna falling on the ground. And they would collect this much, and any more or less, it didn't matter. It all evened out at the end of the day. On the sixth day, God told them, collect double. Why? Because on the seventh day, it wasn't going to rain manna from heaven, because he's like, I've called you to rest. And so every other day, if they left the bread, it would rot. But on the sixth day, it would miraculously make it through the next day. God literally made every circumstance possible for them to learn how to trust and rest in God. Think about it. They are in the wilderness, surrounded by tons of other kingdoms, and they're just resting one day a week. It just sounds crazy. But that's literally what it's like for us too. In our culture, in our day, just to rest and delight in God for a day, that sounds crazy, right? Why would you do that? There's so many things you can get done in that day, you know? But that's what we're called to do. And so Pastor Scazzaro, in his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirits, talks about 4 elements. What are the 4 ways that we can really build a strong Sabbath? And this is the first one, which is actually similar to last week. So this first one is this. The only way to do Sabbath, and that means a 24-hour period. So the Jewish people, how they did it is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. That was their Sabbath. Now, we don't have to get legalistic about when it is exactly, oh my gosh, it was 23 and a half hours long, that's it, dude, it's over. That's not how it works for us because we have Jesus, right? We don't have to be legalistic in that way. But the point is, can you switch days? Yes, it's not a big deal. Can you do a little bit less? Whatever, it's fine. The heart is, are you learning how to trust God on that day? Are you learning the beauty of resting in God and seeking God and knowing God? Not just, oh, okay, I can't work for 12 more hours. That's not what it is. You're missing the point. Do you get what I'm saying? If that's your mentality, which all of us probably have. But the idea is, how can I learn to trust God? How to rest and seek him? So the first one is stop. You have to stop. The only way to do Sabbath is you have to actually know how to stop, okay? How many of you, when you're in the middle of something, you're really in the middle of a paper, or in the middle of making something or doing something, or video games, whatever. You're in the middle of that, and that's exactly when your mom's like, so-and-so so-and-so, come down, you have to eat. Or like, help me with this. And you're like, I cannot stop. I'm like in the middle of this game, I'm in the middle of the show or whatever. Like it's very hard to stop, right? But most of us, it's really hard to stop. But the reality is, I want you to ask yourself, why is it hard for us to stop? Like ask yourself, why is it hard for me to stop? Why is it hard for me to stop? Would it be hard for me to spend a day where I'm not being productive? Why would that be hard for me? And this is the answer. Ready for it? The core spiritual issue around why it's so hard for us to stop is it's a trust issue. We get anxious. We get anxious. If I don't work, or if I don't do this, or if I don't do that, like this and this and this won't happen. And I won't make this money, and I won't be able to support this and this, and I won't be able to do this and that. Like everything's going to fall apart. We get anxious. It's a trust issue. Look at Matthew 6:25. It says this. Jesus is telling his people, this is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life. What you're going to eat and drink or wear. Can all of your worries add a single moment to your life? Who feels like they're really, really good at worrying? Like you're pretty prone to worry really well. Like you could win an award at worrying, okay? Y'all are lying. There's got to be somebody in this room who's good at worrying, okay? But the point is, when you worry, does that actually help you? Think about it. When you worry about something, like you have a big test in school, or you have a big like performance evaluation at work, or whatever, does worrying about it actually help you to do better at those things? No. Does worrying help you feel better? No. It doesn't actually do anything productive for you. And yet, it's so easy to do, to worry. In verse 31, Jesus keeps going. He says this, so don't worry about these things. Like, don't worry, because why? These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers because they don't believe in God, and so they don't have anyone to fall back on. And so they're hustling and hustling. But he's like, but your heavenly Father already knows what you need. Look at the end of that verse. That's the most important part. Look, your heavenly Father already knows what you need. Knows what you need. And so in verse 33, it's this famous verse. Therefore, seek his kingdom above all else. Live righteously. And he will give you everything you need. He will give you everything you need. Does it say everything you want? No. Everything you need. And sometimes what you want, he'll give you too. But he's like, what do you live for? What are you hustling for? What are you anxious about? Don't spend time wasting your life being anxious about things that won't actually help you. Why are you so anxious? When you have a Father in heaven who has every resource and every access and every miraculous power to do anything in our lives, he's like, why are you worrying? One of the ways we can seek his kingdom is by trusting in him. That's the answer, guys. If you're like, how am I supposed to live for God? Trust in him. Learn how to trust in him every day. Learn how to trust in him every day. That's your job as a Christian. The rest of your life. If you can do that, you've made it. Okay, who's a 90s kid? 90s kids. Okay, I'm going to put this image up on the screen. Who remembers this? Can I have the next image? Who remembers this? Who remembers this? Yes. Did you not play that, Sam? Dude, you are not a 90s kid. You are excommunicated from the 90s island, okay? Oregon Trail, y'all, 90s kids. So me, Aaron, and Nick. Woo, okay. So this was like the big game on like for educational like purposes that were was on the computer, you know? Like, you know, the box computer. You know what I'm talking about? Like, okay? So the Oregon Trail, 90s kid stuff, okay? So you like pick your like whatever, your group, and you like try to make it to, like, you know, you have died of dysentery. Like, you know, you like try to make it to Oregon. So I was reading this book, and it was talking about this concept of Sabbath, okay? And so truly, this is a real life story, not a game. A real life story, there were a group of subtle pilgrims, what are they called? Pioneers? I forget. Pioneers, okay. Who are moving from the Midwest to Oregon. It's a group of Christians. And so, they start in the summer or the spring, whatever, They're on their wagons, and they're all happy to go to Oregon, okay? And so in the summer, when the weather is nice, every Sunday on the Sabbath, they would stop. They wouldn't travel on that day. They would rest, okay? But as the months got closer, autumn, winter is approaching, it's getting colder, they're starting to get nervous about stopping on Sunday because they're like, dude, we got to make it to Oregon. And so in this group, they were kind of divided. Half of them were like, no, we got to still stop. And half of them were like, dude, if we stop, we're going to die, okay? So the group split up into two different groups. One group decided to keep the Sabbath and rest every Sunday, and the other group just pushed on, okay? Which group made it to Oregon first? The one that stopped. The one that stopped. Now, there's lots of, you can see all of the reasons behind that. If your animals stop for a day, there's, lots of reasons, but, practical reasons. But the idea was, we often think that if we stop, we're going to get behind. But the reality is, when we stop, we remember all of the important things of who God is. He's the one who's given things to us. Our bodies need rest, so many things, so many reasons why God has built us for work and rest, okay? Which leads me to my next point. You got to stop, but you have to, number 2, you have to rest. Sabbath is about rest. So you're thinking, okay, I got it, Stacey. I got to stop. But what am I supposed to do when I stop? Am I supposed to just twiddle my thumbs for a whole day? Here's the answer. Whatever gives you delight and joy in a healthy and pure and good way, that's what you're supposed to do on your rest with God, okay? Think about what you do during the week for work, okay? So, I don't know, Aaron, you're at the pharmacy, Christian, you're at school all day, David, you're at the dealership, whatever you're doing, all of you are doing things for most of your day, right? So being intentional about on your day of rest, you're doing something different. Don't go back to the pharmacy, Aaron. Don't be on your computer, Sam, all day, if that's what you do for work. You're being radically different about what Sabbath looks like on that day. And so, maybe that's if you're a gym rat and you're there 7 days a week, maybe take a rest day. Or if it's you want to go out into nature, what's rest for you might not be rest to me. Okay, rock climbing does not sound restful to me. Okay, but to someone else, that's their rest, way to recharge. Everyone has their different thing about how they rest. Okay, but the point is, rest is just being, not doing. You can still do, but does that make sense? You're doing in a way that recharges you, not doing in a way that drains you. So you introverts, maybe y'all need just some time to yourself, okay, on that day, or whatever it may be. But finding something that gives you rest, and number 3, delight. Delight. In Genesis 1:31, right before it talks about Sabbath, what did God say? God looked over all that he had made, and he said what? It was very good. So good that he rested. Does that make sense? That's where the connection is. The beauty of Sabbath is delighting. So when y'all become parents one day, I'm going to spoil your kids like crazy. Because all of you guys who give my kid candy and stuff, it's going to come back at you so hard, man. I'm just going to feed your kids with so much sugar. David, those Legos, man, I'm just going to pump your kids. Okay, so this is my little boy. Okay, you know what's cuter than babies? Babies with beanies. Babies wearing beanies is the cutest thing. Okay, he was 6 months old at that time, okay? And now that he's almost 5, I really miss those moments when he was chubby and kind of roly-poly and their legs are chunky. Oh my God, so cute. And I really miss, but in that stage, I was so tired. I'm I just want you to grow up and walk and poop by yourself. You know what I mean? At that stage, I'm oh my God, so many diapers, so much laundry. I'm so tired. But do you know, but I look back and I'm man, I should have just been in the moment and enjoyed how cute he was. Like, he didn't talk back to me at 6 months old. Like, he didn't ask me for candy. Like, it was so much easier then. But, like, in the middle of it, you, like, don't realize that. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, in your life right now, okay, your life right now, would you describe it as full of delight and joy? Maybe not, okay? But in 10 years, you might look back and be like, dude, those days were so great. Like, that was the good old days. Like, why did I, like, rush through that? Why did I want to just, like, get to the next thing? That was the best, right? Like, that's the point. Sabbath helps us to actually delight in our present, where we are right now. Because we'll never get the present again. You will never get it again. And so God calls us to delight. Sabbath actually helps you to be more grateful, truly, because it helps you, like, stop and realize, dang, this is really good. Like, it's hard. Life sucks. It's hard still. But what I have in front of me, I have a lot of things to be thankful for. That I have a roof over my head. That I'm not homeless in the streets. Like, you know, like, there's so many things to be thankful for. But when you're rushing and rushing and rushing, do you have time to stop and think and be grateful and delight? No. Does that make sense? And God calls us to say, hey, just take a chill, okay? And just delight in what I've given you. And when you do that, your relationship with God actually grows because you're thankful before him. Sabbath is an invitation to joy and delight with God. It's an invitation. Now, Sabbath is not legalistic. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like, oh, I have to do it or else I fail. Does that bring you delight to feel that way? No. Okay? So, like, think about Sabbath needs to be about stopping, resting, and delighting. There has to be joy. If this is not bringing me joy, switch it. Don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about what day or what you do. That's not the point. Does that make sense? Like, you have to delight in it. And the last part is to contemplate, to think about God, right? You could be like, oh, look at all of this great things I have. Man, I'm amazing. I did all this. Okay, if that's your conclusion, then Sabbath has not been successful for you, okay? Because you have to stop and rest and delight and realize, wow, it's God who gave this to me. It's God who gave me this life, okay? That's the conclusion we all need to come to, all right? So, in summary, daily office is fun-sized bar. Like, it's just a little bit each day, stopping and pausing to seek God. Sabbath is the jumbo-sized candy bar. They're like, I'm going to be intentional. Maybe for you, 12 hours is what's going to work. Maybe it's just like, I can only do, like, just this one day. Fine. Maybe whatever it is, doesn't matter. Find a moment to stop, rest, delight, and think about God and enjoy what God has given you. That's God's command to you, an invitation to you. It's not about hustling. It's not about doing all these things. It's about being with him and trusting him. Remember last week I told you about the golden circle? I love my golden circle, okay? The why, the power of the why. Why do you do it? And again, that's the same question today. Why do you do Sabbath? Why do you want a deeper relationship with God? You have to know why. I can't tell you your why. You have to know your why. Why do you do it? Because when you know what your why is, then you can start building it into your life. Okay, I'm going to do all these things to make it practical. But you have to know why. I want to do this because I want to rest in God. I want to enjoy what God's given me. Whatever your why may be, you have to know what that is for yourself. And so, here are your questions for today on the board. This is really fun questions for today. So number 1, what recharges you? What makes you feel really, like, healthy? Like, in a good, life-giving way. How anxious are you about things with God? Okay, on a scale. And then what is your why? Why do you want to do Sabbath or rest and build a relationship with God? Can I have the praise team come up, please? The last 2 weeks, I've talked about what does it practically look like to build a deeper relationship with God? Not just like surface, like, oh, hey, what's up, God? It's Sunday. You're cool. I'm cool. We're good. Okay, let's move on. That's not a deep relationship, okay? Like, it can start there, but it needs to go deeper. And everyone's like, what is the answer? How do I, we make it so hard. We make it so hard. We're chasing for some miracle potion to take to suddenly my Christian life is better. You guys know when you visit the doctor and in America, the greatest issue is heart attack, diabetes, those kinds of things. What do they tell you at the doctor's office? More medication, is that going to help you? Well, maybe temporarily. But what is the answer to that? What's the answer for most Americans? Diet and exercise. That's it. Change your lifestyle. It's that easy and hard at the same time, right? That's the same thing with Christianity. With living for God, knowing God, we're like, why is it so hard? It's so frustrating. And yes, it is hard. You know why it's hard? Because it's countercultural. It goes against the rest of the world. That's why it's hard. You're pushing upstream the entire time. But it's actually really easy, the answer. The answer is you have to know why you want to know God for yourself. Not me telling you, not your parents telling you, but why do you want to know God for yourself? A, and B, do it. Spend that moment, 5 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes if that's all it takes, but being intentional about learning how to stop and seek God. And then when you can, learning how to do Sabbath, learning how to just actually be with God. That's how easy it is, and it's really hard. But that's the answer. That's the answer to building a richer, deeper, lifelong relationship with God. Can we all stand? We're going to sing this song. It's a really old, famous song. It's Sue Young's favorite song. I just keep saying that, but it's a beautiful song. But it's talking about when everything else in our lives, when there's a storm all around us, when everything is falling apart, where do we go? Where do we go? We go to God. All we have to do is be still and be in His presence. And that's the best place to be. When the oceans rise, thunders roar, when the storm is going crazy around us, Sabbath, seeking Him, being in His presence. That's the safest place. I'll sing this song.